Ling Tong. Although he only lived until the age of 28, Ling Tong achieved a great many things in his life. Alongside Lu Meng, he was regarded the most valued military general for the Wu kingdom in the eyes of its leader, Sun Quan. He began military service in his teenage years and fought in many key battles in his time. His greatest acts of military prowess occur in the campaigns against Cao Cao, where he displayed his tenacity when he was thrown into difficult situations. He has been described as caring deeply for the men who served under him, and noted that he became distraught when his men were wounded or worse. Despite being an important military serviceman, away from the front lines, Ling Tong still found time to meet with the scholar gentry, where he became admired and respected by them. His accommodating reputation and strict code of honour, which strived to not pass judgment, earned their favour in no time. On one occasion, he had overslept and left the talented Sheng Xian waiting. When he awoke, he rushed out of bed to greet him immediately, then held his hand as he led him to meet with Sun Quan. Ling Tong was an all-round brilliant general. He treated the wealthy and the poor all the same, and was brave and skilled in combat. His humanity and loyalty led to him being highly respected by those around him. He even came up with an impressive strategy to pacify the Shanyue tribes, which was a great success. In Wu Commandery, at the time of Ling Tong's birth in the year 189, his father, Ling Cao, was serving under Sun Ce. Ling Cao fought under Ce since his banner was raised, and became known for his bravery and gallantry. He participated in many battles, helping the little conqueror carve out a kingdom, where he would often lead his unit ahead of the others into the fighting. Under Sun Ce, he was tasked with countering the Shanyue tribes, which he did with relative success, resulting in lowered crime rates. He was awarded as the colonel who defeats bandits for his deeds. It was around the year 203, when Sun Quan attacked Zhangju at Jiangxia, that Ling Cao was killed in action. This battle is not to be confused with another battle at Jiangxia that occurs 5 years later, where Sun Quan and Ling Tong finally managed to avenge their fathers. These two battles have been merged together and featured in the Dynasty Warriors video games. Appointed as the vanguard of Sun Quan's fleet, Ling Cao led the smaller vessels in an uninterrupted charge straight towards Huangzhu's defensive line of ships. Caught completely off guard by the fast-moving minor attack force, Huangzhu did not have time to mount an effective defense. He fled from his flagship on a small boat back to his home base, which left his navy without command, leading to a complete collapse of its formation. As the fighting went on, Ling Cao tried to pursue Huangzhu, also on a small ship, but was shot and killed by an arrow fired by Gan Ning. At 15 years old, Ling Tong was then appointed by Sun Quan as a major of a separate command, to honour his father's loyal service and unfortunate death. After numerous people had mentioned to Sun Quan the young Ling Tong's abilities, it wasn't long until he was allowed to inherit his old father's title. He assumed command of his father's old troops and became the new colonel who defeats bandits. The first battle at Jiangxia led to Huangzhu hiding behind his castle walls, whilst the Wu army failed to make any progress. They were forced to retreat when bandit tribes began making trouble in the hilly regions of their homeland. Sun Quan quickly led his army back and claimed victory over a bandit stronghold. As he was required elsewhere, he left 10,000 men under the command of Ling Tong and Yanyi to capture another one. Leading up to their first mission, Chen was in charge of hosting a banquet for the generals, but he was openly abusing his powers by bullying others. When Ling Tong confronted Chen for his insolence, he held abuse to him, where he insulted his dead father. Ling Tong did not react to this. He was in tears, but he refrained himself. After the banquet, when they were on the road and drinking, Ling Tong was insulted again. This time he could not hold back. He drew a knife on Chen and cut him with its blade. In the days leading up to the battle, Chen wound had worsened to the point of death. Bound by duty, and knowing that his actions required corporal punishment, Ling Tong remarked, "Only through death can my transgression be cleansed." When the fighting commenced, Ling Tong mimicked his father by rushing ahead of his allies. It states that he charged ahead of his troops in the face of enemy arrows and boulders. The part of the garrison that Ling Tong attacked was captured straight away. This act of bravery roused the other Wu generals to push on and claim a crushing victory over their enemy. After the battle, Ling Tong handed himself over to the disciplinary officer to await his punishment. Sun Quan became so impressed with how Ling Tong behaved throughout all of this that not only was he pardoned for his crime, but also given a higher rank. Sun Quan attacked Wangzhou again in 208 with the same strategy, only Ling Tong was to lead the vanguard in his father's place. Ling Tong found a great victory. With only tens of men, he had boarded the enemy boats and killed Jiang Shuo before capturing all of the enemy ships. He then returned to Sun Quan with as many of these new ships as he could before launching another attack, this time on land and water. It's at this point Wangzhou tried to block the river up with his two largest boats, whilst his men launched projectiles from the cliff tops. Ling Tong and Dongxi gathered 100 volunteers for highly risky service who were given armour of double thickness. They sailed their largest barge, ramming right into the blockade. Braving the arrows of the enemy, they pressed on, eventually managing to unchain the blockade ships, which allowed Sun Quan's main fleet to enter Miankou. Lu Meng finished off the navy, whilst Ling Tong led his men on land and captured Jiangxia. For his deeds, Ling Tong was promoted to the Commandant of Vehemence. Gan Ning, who had become unhappy with Wangzhou, had defected over to the Wu side. With Ling Tong and the killer of his father now in the same place, their animosity towards one another grew. Ling Tong participated in the Battle of Chibi, whereafter they pushed into Jing province to attack Tao Ren at Jiangling. Ren had been reinforced by many cities and commanded troops numbering over 120,000. On top of this, Liu Zhang was sending reinforcements to Tao Ren via Yiling. Gan Ning was sent with a smaller force to go around Tao Ren's defensive line and secure Yiling, in order to block off the arrival of the reinforcements. When Tao Ren turned his attentions towards Gan Ning, Ning became trapped by the larger enemy force. Numerous messengers arrived at the Wu camp calling for Zhou Yu and the others to send help, but none of the generals thought they could afford to do so. Lu Meng urged them to follow him to rescue Gan Ning, whilst Ling Tong stays behind to defend their current position. When this was agreed upon, Ling Tong managed to hold out for at least 10 days, proving that Lu Meng's faith in him was not misplaced. Ling Tong defended this position alone against the joint armies of Tao Ren and Xu Huang, who had a numerical advantage. At the same time, Tao Ren had lost 3,000 out of the 6,000 cavalry he had sent trying to recapture Yiling in a single day. Ling Tong was promoted for his deeds after this, and soon headed east with Lu Meng and Gan Ning to attack Cao Cao's garrison at Wan County, further driving him from the area. After Wan was conquered, he was promoted again and appointed as a chancellor. Despite working together for years now, Ling Tong had never forgiven Gan Ning for killing his father. Gan Ning took a defensive approach by trying to avoid meeting with Ling Tong whenever possible. Sun Quan had also given a direct order to Ling Tong to not seek vengeance. On one occasion, they came pretty close to a conflict. At a banquet at Lu Meng's house, Ling Tong was performing a sword dance to the guests. It should be noted that the sword dance at a feast acts as a means of assassination, originating back to an event known as the Hongmen Banquet. Gan Ning stood up in a challenging manner and exclaimed, "I can perform a double halberd dance." It was at this point Lu Meng realised what was about to happen. He stood up himself and said, "Although I'm sure you can, Ning, you are not as skillful as I." He then drew his weapon between the pair, which de-escalated the situation. When Sun Quan learned of this event, he realised Ling Tong would not let it go, and so relocated Gan Ning to Banju so the two would not cross paths again. Years later, in 215, he accompanied Lu Meng in his stealth mission to capture the 3 commanderies from under Guanyu. When Guanyu arrived with an army to reclaim them, Ling Tong was sent to counter their advance where they fought at Yiyang. This territorial dispute was later resolved by dividing the region into 2 along the Xiang River. When the Sun-Liu alliance was re-established, a joint attack against Cao Cao was arranged. Liu Bei was to attack Hanzhong, while Sun Quan led a huge army towards Zhang Liao, who was stationed at Hefei. As Zhang Liao fought with great valour, the early stages of the battle did not go well for Wu. Zhang Liao knew the importance of these initial skirmishes for the Wei troops, so he could not afford to lose. As the Wu morale slowly fell, it wasn't long until a plague also broke out, forcing Sun Quan to order a full retreat. At Xiaoyao Ford, the Wu officers were overseeing the retreat. Sun Quan, Lu Meng, Jiang Xin, Ling Tong and Gan Ning were caught off guard when Zhang Liao launched a surprise attack against them. At first, Chuan tried to recall his army, but realised that was impossible. After narrowly escaping capture from Zhang Liao numerous times, Ling Tong arrived with 300 men who encircled and helped their lord escape. It's mentioned that Xuan jumped on his horse across a broken bridge to get away. It also states that Ling Tong returned to the battlefield and fought until all of his men were dead. His body was covered in wounds, and only when he had assessed that Sun Quan was safe did he leave himself. Ling Tong had to wade through the river with his armour on to escape, where Sun Quan was very surprised to see him and overly delighted. Ling Tong was near death and weeping because all of his close aides were dead. Sun Quan wiped Ling Tong's tears and said, "Gongji, let the dead go. As long as you live, why worry that you have no men under you?" Ling Tong's injuries were so severe it's claimed that only with the high-quality medical treatment that Sun Quan could provide was he able to survive. Ling Tong was further promoted after this event, and issued twice as many soldiers to command. When it came to pacifying the Shanyue tribes, Ling Tong favoured a more peaceful approach, and to no surprise, it proved far more effective. The Shanyue tribes were part of the Han dynasty in name only, and were not directly governed by them. Raids onto Han cities were common, as the tribesmen wanted the more advanced living commodities to be found there. Ever since the Sun family first set foot in Jiangdong, the Shanyue tribes had been a nuisance for them. Whenever they were put down with military force, the tribes would just navigate the hills and mountains and disappear into hiding. Ling Tong proposed that they could peacefully assimilate the tribes by offering roles and rewards that they can strive for. In agreement, Ling Tong was granted the staff of authority. This allowed him to claim materials from nearby counties when he needed them. Next, he organised a unit with flamboyant weapons and armour designed to impress on sight. Ling Tong's unit managed to go unnoticed somehow until they were deep in Shanyue territory. Once discovered, the tribesmen were indeed very shocked and impressed. They agreed with Ling Tong's proposal, whereafter 10,000 men accompanied him on his return visit to Wu. Zhu Geike would adopt and modify this strategy at a later date. His version of this strategy had the surrounding commanderies refrain from using military force against them. When harvest season arrived, the Wu soldiers were sent to gather it before the Shanyue had a chance to. This led to a food shortage for the tribesmen, which Zhu Geike could then exploit to bring them into the fold. On a journey to the Shanyue tribes, Ling Tong stopped by his hometown. Here, he's recorded as treating the commoners with decency despite all the fame and glory he had earned. He abruptly died of illness on the return journey at the age of 28. Upon learning of this, Sun Quan became grief-stricken and could not stop crying. He ordered Zhang Cheng to write a eulogy which encompassed all of Ling Tong's achievements. At the time of his passing, Ling Tong had 2 sons who were both very young. Sun Quan took them into his palace and treated them as his own children. Whenever he introduced the pair, he'd say, "These are my tiger cubs." They received a top education and were both taught to horse ride from an early age. The eldest went on to inherit Ling Tong's marquisate and was given command of his old unit. When he was found guilty of committing an offence, the titles were passed on to the younger brother. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.